Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I want to talk about Dungeons & Dragons, and I want to talk about a Dungeons & Dragons OSR inversion, right? And this is a very unusual topic. Don't normally talk about this. What I'm talking about is quite unusual, but, you know, I don't talk about regular stuff on this channel. I think that's, I don't bother. I don't bother saying stuff people already said. All right, here we go. What is a Dungeons & Dragons OSR inversion? Okay, so I just performed it with Arbor Adventures. And so that was my current, that was a 12-session Dungeons & Dragons campaign that I ran with the Dungeons & Dragons lore of Faerun, with Forgotten Realms, and specifically with the rules of Crown and Skull. Runehammer Games, fantastic Crown and Skull. And if you don't know what Crown and Skull is, so first of all, OSR is quite interesting. I think generally a good description of the OSR. I'm a huge movie fan. This is just such great language. I know this is a little bit of a walk, but let's go there together. All right. So basically, Fish Jelly, they are amazing movie reviewers. They review just an incredible. They do full spoiler reviews of almost every movie, and they talked about a movie called The Deliverance, right? And they said, this is entertaining, and actually it was Nick that said this. Nick from Fish Jelly. He said this about the movie The Deliverance, which is a possession movie starring Glenn Close, right? And so very unusual film, and also Monique was in it. And Nick said that The Deliverance was entertaining but not good. And I think that is 98% of all OSR games, right? There's a few exceptions, right? Anything Runehammer Games makes is an exception. I think anything Arcane Library makes is an exception. But the vast majority of OSR is really terrible. Now, why is it terrible? That's a legitimate question, right? Why is it so bad? It's fundamentally copy energy, right? Like, so right out of the gate, you're not getting somebody who's going to bring you something innovative and new and fresh, right? OSR is literally a bunch of copiers, right? So it's going to be really rare that you actually get something that is good, right? And so I think, describing the OSR is fair to say entertaining but not good, right? And but there's a ton of these games out there. There's easily 1,000 OSR games, right? And I would say 100 of them are worth even knowing their name, right? Like 90% of all OSR games, you could skip them, right? You could just skip them, right? But there's a few, right? Like, so Index Card RPG, Crown and Skull, Shadow Dark. These are solid, right? And so there's something there in the OSR. Now, what I want to talk about is a Dungeons & Dragons OSR inversion, okay? So the reality is, I love Dungeons & Dragons. That puts me in the world of tabletop role-playing games, and I'm really trying to do nothing but play Dungeons & Dragons, right? But it's hard because, like, right now, I'm running a 2D20 Modifius Star Trek Adventures game, right? And there's a good reason to do that, right? Because Dungeons & Dragons has not made literally 40 books filled with every single era of Star Trek, right? They haven't done it, right? So that's a good reason to go off script and go outside of the Dungeons & Dragons world, right? But OSR is interesting because they have some really fascinating rules. So let me explain a D&D OSR inversion, and I highly recommend doing this. Okay, so I ran Duet Dungeons and Dragons. That's the term that I heard Matt Colville use for this. One Dungeon Master, one Dragon Master, 12 sessions, right? And actually, we ended up at 12 sessions because we reached a solid break in the campaign, right? And we broke it where you would break a single movie in a trilogy, right? But when we started that campaign, we used Crown and Skull rules exclusively, right? And we ran it Crown and Skull rules with the Forgotten Realms world, right? And it worked fantastic. It was very, very good, right? But as we began to play it, we were able to tell the best rules from OSR, right? From the best rules from Crown and Skull. What are the best rules from Crown and Skull? No to hit roll. That is the future of TTRPGs. No to hit roll. It just massively accelerates combat, makes it much more simple, much more visceral, much more dangerous. It's very cool, right? And then there's quite a few, and so that is brilliant, right? The other thing is you have no hit points when you are. Actually, you do have hit points. Your hit points are 10 points of equipment and 10 skills. And when you get hit, you lose equipment either temporarily or permanently, and you lose skills lose skills until they're healed, right? It's brilliant. It really makes damage matter. It is so phenomenally amazing. It is just fantastic. It is really, really powerful and epic, and there are other stuff, right? There, like Crown and Skull has a ton of fantastic. I would say it has like 5 to 7, campaign changing rules that should be in every campaign, right? So we use Crown and Skull, but at the end we started to realize, okay, this is awesome, this is awesome, this is awesome, but some of Crown and Skull is not awesome, right? I'll give you an example. The skills. They have a different skill set than Dungeons and Dragons. Now, the only reason they have this different skill set is they can't just copy Dungeons and Dragons skill set. They have to modify it, right? And they modified it significantly, and it's bad. It's just way worse than Dungeons and Dragons skill set, right? It's specific skills, right? So one of the things we did was we were like, we've been using these Crown and Skull skill list, not skill set. The skill list, and why don't we just switch back to Dungeons and Dragons skill list, right? And it was phenomenally better, right? It was just really phenomenally better. The other thing is Crown and Skull doesn't have advantage or disadvantage, and I was like, let's put that back in, right? And by the end, we were using it Dungeons and Dragons advantage and disadvantage. So what I'm saying is that what we should do with OSR games is we should buy them. Right? I bought the physical copy of Crown and Skull because I trust Runehammer Games. I know everything they do is a banger. It's incredible. And by the way, don't forget, Kelsey Dion came up through Runehammer Games. She did Blood and Snow. And I'll tell you right now, working with Hankard and Farinale, that's how you earn a bunch of Ennies like that. So Kelsey Dion earned them. They're all hers, right? But I can tell you right now, I don't think that she would have got them if she hadn't spent time working with Runehammer Games, all right? So respect where respect is due. All right. So what we should do with OSR is you should never play OSR for more than like 3 months, right? So what you want to do is get in, right? And basically buy it, read it, run it, right? And then just like Han did with the Tauntaun, cut that sucker open with a lightsaber and just sleep inside, right? Like that's what should happen with every single OSR game. The OSR is just a farm league for Dungeons and Dragons. And so what you want to do is go in, find all the good stuff, right? And then how do you bring it back to D&D? Like, well, Scott, if you're just using all these rules from Crown and Skull, isn't that just Crown and Skull? No. I could use the best of Crown and Skull, and I could bring it into Dungeons and Dragons as official canon Dungeons and Dragons. How? Page 4 of the Dungeon Master Guide. The rules aren't in charge, you are. You can insert whatever you wish, and you could take out whatever you wish from D&D, right? And that's canon D&D. That's the way it works, right? Anytime you hear anybody say homebrew, they don't have any idea what they're talking about. When you change Dungeons and Dragons, rules, lore, anything, right? As long as you are using the physical PHB, DMG, Monster Manual, any changes you make, as long as you are keeping, one cornerstone, it's still Dungeons and Dragons, and it's still fully canon. changing Dungeons and Dragons is full canon, right? And I will say this right now, running Dungeons and Dragons raw with no changes, I don't think that's canon. And I think you suck as a dungeon master. Like, if you're not making any change, you never heard the voice of Gary Gygax, dead or alive, right? So every single word you just heard, that's my humble opinion. Fully my humble opinion. Nothing more, nothing less. What's important is when I hear your humble opinion. When you get in the comments and send your traffic, please consider liking and subscribing, and have a fetch millennium.